So we've been covering everything that's been happening with this David investigation, we'll call it, into Celeste Rivas's murder. Now, we're trying to figure out and find out what's going on with the cause of death for Celeste Rivas, because the medical examiner is having some issues figuring out what the cause of death is, and that may be the main reason that there haven't been arrests made in this case. Now, we heard some information last week about Celeste's body, and maybe they had some more information. There were rumors that David's now being named as a suspect. We're going to get in it shortly, that we may actually have a second suspect in this, according to TMZ. Now, we know how things go with TMZ, so we'll take it with a grain of salt, but we'll have to see what Harvey has to say here about this David situation as we get into some of these major updates in the investigation. Check this out.
Some major developments in the Celeste Rivas death. TMZ has learned that her body had been frozen. And when it was found, it was still partially frozen in the back of David's car. And it was in such bad condition that we are told the medical examiner may never be able to establish the cause of death. So here's what we know. When the body was found, it was in terrible condition. It had been decapitated, the torso was intact, the limbs had been removed, and they were cut up severely. The body was partially frozen in the trunk. And this is really important because remember, the body had been sitting there for days before it was finally impounded and then the body discovered. And it was still, the body parts were still partially frozen. So we are told that when the body first went to the medical examiner's office in early September, it was listed as an apparent homicide, but that was just from what seemed obvious, that the body was cut up into pieces. The medical examiner is having a really tough time right now trying to figure out what the cause of death was. We are told it is likely the cause of death will go undetermined because of the condition of the body and the fact that it was frozen and the fact that it was cut up the way it was. So we have told you that we know David is a suspect, and even if it is undetermined, the LAPD can still move forward, as could the LA County District Attorney. The LAPD is viewing this as a homicide. David is a suspect. We know this. And one of the keys to the case is a trip that authorities say David made in the middle of the night back in this spring to a remote area of Santa Barbara County. We are now also told that there is a second suspect, and our information is that the second suspect has something to do with the cutting up of the body.
Oh, man. Now, this is huge because we talked about this last week when we last covered this. The second suspect is going to be a major thing. Who could potentially the second suspect be? Would it be David? Would it be David's brother? Who could have been involved in this? And because we mentioned this last time, I pointed out that if they know he took this trip, either they have the cell phone data, which was most likely they would have gotten his cell phone during the investigation, or they have the information for the Tesla, which seems like it would have been pretty easy to get, which is why a lot of us said at the beginning, why hasn't David been arrested? Even though it was his car, if they have his cell phone, it should have been pretty simple and straightforward to put together that he was either involved in this or not involved in this. And then we heard statements from the police department saying they don't have any named suspects. Now we're finding out they do. Who could be the second person? And are they going to be able to prove that it was a homicide? Man, this is crazy.
Now, Mark Garagos, who is my co-host on the Two Angry Men podcast, told us in the most recent podcast that his information is that this second suspect is being looked at not just for dismembering the body, but also for what happened before, during, and after Celeste's death. So there is a second suspect that the LAPD has its sights on. They have identified the person. Garriga says he knows who it is, not saying, but it is a second suspect implicated here. So obviously the question, how on earth did this body go from Santa Barbara, if that's indeed where it was taken? And that seems to be the operating theory of the LAPD, that if it was taken to Santa Barbara, how did it end up back in Los Angeles in the trunk of David's car in a residential neighborhood. The only thing that makes sense, and that's months and months later, the only thing that makes sense is that based on connecting the dots, it would seem that this body was put in a freezer for an extended period of time, and it was so frozen that by the time it got in the car, it took a long, long time for it to unfreeze, and it had not fully unfrozen at the time the body was discovered at the impound lot. So again, it looks like there may never be a cause of death determined by the medical examiner. The body was frozen. Just keep looking at TMZ. We will have more updates as the days pass.
And they kept true to that promise. Let's check out this article. Celeste Rivas's second suspect identified, the last person to use David's Tesla. Here we go with the information from the Tesla. This is what we wanted, and we thought law enforcement should have had a long time ago. Check this out. LAPD homicide detectives have ID'd the second suspect in the death of Celeste Rivas. And it's someone who law enforcement says could be involved before, during, or after her death. Mark Garagos dropped the new info on the latest Two Angry Men podcast after speaking with people directly involved with the case. Garagos says law enforcement has done a stunningly impressive job connecting the dots in this case using a combination of cell phone and Tesla data. This is what we said last week, the same thing, along with the location data and social media. Garagos and Harvey both independently confirm that sources that a central part of the case is a mysterious trip that David took to a remote area in Santa Barbara County in the middle of the night last spring. Not great. Based on various connections with our sources, it appears investigators believe Celeste's body may have been in the car. Garagos insinuates various data that shows the second suspect may have also been in the vehicle. The medical examiner has not yet determined the cause of death. At least it has not yet been conveyed to law enforcement. The Two Angry Men podcast is packed with info on this case. Make sure y'all check it out and go show some love. Also, we have some more information from TMZ on what was going on with the house and what police found in their investigation of that house out there in LA. David's house, or the house that he rented, had a freezer. The cops focused on the storage of Celeste Rivas's body. We even heard rumored that they found blood. Again, that's a rumor and hasn't been verified yet. Singer David, a suspect in a presumed homicide of Celeste Rivas, had a freezer large enough to store a body. A relevant fact since her body was apparently frozen for months. What? This is so wild, man. They show the freezer here. They said, check out this photo of David's rental home. It was taken a few years ago, and it shows the kitchen with a KitchenAid refrigerator / freezer. The freezer size of the appliance had a height around 74 inches and a width around 14 inches and a depth of roughly 27 inches. The temperature can get as low as -8 degrees Fahrenheit. Why would you need a freezer that cold? Celeste was 5'3" and 120 pounds. TMZ broke the story. Her body was found in a bag in David's Tesla. It was decapitated and the arms and limbs cut off. So it could have fit in the freezer if the shelving inside had been removed, which is easy to do. By the way, a torso for a 5'3" woman falls between 15 and 17 inches. You could literally just slide that thing in the top rack. Jesus. And 14 and 15 inches wide. Mind you, we do not know if the police have zeroed in on the freezer, but as we first reported, the body was partially frozen when it was found. This after an extended period of time in David's trunk back in August when it was hot in LA. The LAPD executed a search warrant on the home shortly after the body was discovered. It was probably cleaned up by then. There's also a video that is resurfaced on social media from September 4th, 2024, showing David in a house, not his rental, with an appliance box behind him. Let's check out this video. So did they plan this? There's no sound on this, by the way. And you see the appliance box there. Is it something? Is it nothing? Is it a coincidence? Oh man, the box appears to be a convertible chest / freezer with a removable storage basket. It has a capacity of 7 cubic feet. By the way, the last video of Celeste that we've seen is from September of 2024. We don't know if this freezer had any connection to the case, but the timing is off. Again, there has to be something there. Who buys a random freezer? What are you going to be putting in a freezer? At a rental house or in another house even. We don't know if the freezer has any connection to this case, but the timing is off. Remember, authorities say David went to a remote area of Santa Barbara around the spring of 2025, and that's where they believe Celeste's body was dismembered. As we reported, authorities believe the body has been frozen for an extended period of time. And TMZ broke the story that David took a trip out to Santa Barbara in the middle of the night late last spring, and he spent several hours out there. A source with knowledge says authorities did not believe Celeste was ever buried in Santa Barbara. They believe her body was dismembered there. So they dismembered her body and took the body back? One source with knowledge tells TMZ one theory is David and the accomplice, who is also now a suspect, may have taken the body there, dismembered it, and returned to LA, where it sat in the freezer for months. If that were the case, the question is, why did the body end up in David's Tesla? Why did they leave it there? There are various theories, including David was no longer staying at the house because he was on tour, and other people were staying in the home who could have discovered the body. Again, this is just one theory, but we've told the LAPD methodically putting a timeline together to determine what happened to Celeste. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. Obviously, all signs are pointing to David, and even more signs are pointing to this being something that was planned and put together. We have so much evidence that we have to see specifically what the medical examiner is talking about. Now that we know that the body was frozen and dismembered and had been there for months, this is going to be a tough one to beat, and even a tough one to trial. So we'll have to see what they say. Let me know what y'all